Guys, as we stand here or sit here on a Monday afternoon at 1 p.m., 1:10 to be exact, the news is there is no news. The news is no further statements from the UFC, no statements of any kind. Endeavor declining to make any sort of comment. Dana White just defiantly moving forward. We got the F It Friday video. We've got Twitter activity. I mean, it's all just good in the hood. And it just...
Slapley got pushed back a week.
Slapley got pushed back a week. Thank you for reminding me of that. From January 11th to January 18th. Just a week, amazingly. Yeah. And so by January 18th, this is all good. GC, you surprised by any of this? Any of this surprised you? The no comment from... Endeavor, UFC, Slapley just getting delayed a week after some reports stating that it was done. Dana just defiantly moving forward, same old content. Any of this surprise you?
Nah, I think I said on the show last week I didn't think anything was going to happen. It's disappointing, but it's not surprising to me, no.
Nothing. NYRic, anything surprise you here?
I am surprised by the F It Friday video coming out. Think that was poor taste, like just... If
bologna, dare I say? Was it bologna taste?
Bologna pie, yeah, bologna pie.
Bologna taste, bologna pie.
Make more statements if you're not going to say anything. Like maybe pocket that one. I don't know if maybe there was some kind of obligation to do it, or something like that.
Wait, are those sponsored?
Maybe, I don't know.
I don't think.
But either way, pocket that one. Figure out a way. It can't be good. Even if it was, let's say it was sponsored, it can't be good for their brand to be associated with that one. That first one back, that's going to get a lot of vitriol, so pocket that. So I was surprised to see that. It felt off. And I was surprised by the Power Slap League being delayed 1 week, because if you're going to just defiantly say like this is a non-issue, don't even delay it a week. Why even bother? Like it's a non-step. Just keep it the same date or get rid of it. The delaying a week didn't really make much sense strategically. For me. But in terms of any other statements, whether it be ESPN, UFC, or Endeavor, not surprised at all, because this is the tact that they've already laid out that they are going to take. They are not going to further comment.
It's wild, man. Again, I hate to keep making the comparison to regular sports, but could you imagine a team, if this was the owner of a team, not saying anything? Could you imagine the league not saying anything, the parent company, whatever, not saying a word? And you know, many a journalist reached out to Endeavor. It took them 5 days just to say they were declining comment. And now here you go. And you see a lot of people saying to me like, hey, they've moved on. The family has moved on. You should move on as well. And again, I will repeat for the 50th time, it's not just about them. It really isn't. It is the message that you have now sent to your roster. It's the message that you have sent to everyone who fights for the UFC and who works for the UFC, that this stuff, this activity, doesn't matter who slapped who first, this type of activity is going to be, is going to be okay. It's going to go unpunished. And that to me is just a real sad state of affairs. Shameful.
You're 100% right. I think this strategy will come back to hurt them, in my opinion, because this will die down now. They have not been forced, right? Their hand has not been forced to comment on this. There's nothing significant enough happened. The coverage of it, new things, nothing significant enough has happened to make them comment on it. But there will be something that will make them comment on it down the line. I am sure of it. There will be a fighter asked about it. There will be a fighter talking about it. There will be a new incident that comes up with a fighter, and now it is back in the spotlight. There will be a time that they will need to address this, and it would have, in my opinion, been better to proactively do that than to reactively do that. So I have a feeling this will die down for the interim, but there will be a moment where this comes back up, and Dana White specifically in relation to this comes back up, and at that point they will be kind of holding the bag a little bit, and they will regret having not commented earlier.
100%. A fighter is going to get involved in something, and then he's going to have to sit there and respond to it as he has in the past, and he's going to look like a total hypocrite. And you're starting to, like, there are some random ones, right? I didn't have Kyle Kuzma speaking up on this on the bingo card, right? Kyle Kuzma, DL Hughley, Noriega. There's been some random people popping up.
Jamie Foxx,
yes. But yet it hasn't really reached any sort of point to where they have felt like they are forced to respond. I will repeat something that I said on the Dan Le Batard show. I found the first take, quote unquote, discussion, if you want to call it that, incredibly disappointing. I still can't get over the word. I can't get over the thought process of saying we don't judge people in their lowest moments. I can't get over that because that's all that they do. That's all that we do. That's all that pundits of any kind do. We judge people in their highest moments and their lowest moments, right? We just judged Kyrie Irving in his lowest moment. We judge Conor McGregor in his lowest and his high. We do that all day, but for some reason, if we're buds, if he gives us tickets, if we're represented by the same agency, we're not going to judge. I thought that was really, really disappointing. And
I went back and watched it, and I'm just 100% with you. I mean, having watched First Take for however many years that I've watched it, I mean, they just got finished reprimanding Kyrie Irving at every single turn that he took. And then for this to happen, and, it was a sort of a non-story on the show, and they spent 5 minutes talking about it. And we know Dana White, and he's incredible. He's this fantastic guy.
Leader of men, family
leader
man.
Of men, very close friend to me. And I mean, how close of friends are they actually? Like, he's given them tickets a couple of times. Like, to see them, just no-sell it and just keep the train rolling after all the coverage that they had with Kyrie Irving, like, it was just crazy.
If that was any football player, if that was any basketball player,
anyone that played in any of the major leagues, NHL, MLB, NFL, any of those, it's leading the show. It's going on for hours. Like, they're having on guest after guest to talk about it. It was just it was
hypocritical.
I think they're hiding a little bit behind the idea that this is a family issue, right? Because Kyrie Irving, we're talking about somebody making statements in the public, and it is singularly Kyrie Irving, right? Whereas in this scenario, we're dealing with Dana White, his wife, his family, involved in something where they can hide behind the idea that, like, look, they've settled it behind closed doors. It's none of our business. But in reality, because of Dana White's position, because of his involvement with the UFC, because of who he is as a public figure, I think that's nonsense, and it needs to be addressed, obviously. But it is different than Kyrie Irving. It is not the same.
Oh, no, I know. I'm just saying they don't
like
controversial
to kick people when they're
topic
down.
should be addressed. Absolutely.
That's the place that we go to.
They said in the segment that they don't like to kick people when they're down, when that is what that show thrives on.
But that's what all media does, right? Someone is involved in it's like, O.J. Simpson, we're not going to talk about what? What are you talking about? Like, someone does something, you talk about it, good or bad, and oftentimes it's a bad thing, and then that puts a spotlight on them. I also love how all the graphics, all the, like the bars, the lower thirds are not that this happened, it's Dana White apologizes.
Yeah.
It's all spinning it in this positive light. It's really, it really makes you wonder, why is everyone so afraid? Why is everyone trying to protect this guy? And why do they treat him with kid gloves? Is it because he is known to call up people and chew them out and they just don't want to deal with it? But it's like, you're ESPN, you're the major networks, you're every single, like, why are you guys shying away from this? It is a very, very bizarre thing.
Money. They've paid them.
They pay, exactly. And this notion, again, I'll say, like, the notion that this thing can't continue and this thing can't thrive without him is so incredibly false. It is so incredibly false. Like, the thing would be just fine. In fact, you can make a strong argument that it is holding them back, that he is holding them back. And so I think that there is a group of people there. And by the way, I know for a fact that there are people within Endeavor who aren't comfortable with this, who aren't happy with the response. But the larger, the big dogs are like, let's as we have always said, they don't think enough of us. And it hasn't broken through really to where they feel like they have to respond. So they're just like, let's just keep this in-house to our vest, and this thing will blow over, and then we'll talk. Let's just get to Gaslam and Imavov. And by the time, we get there, this will be a distant memory. And more often than not, they're right.
Yeah, it is an effective strategy. And from the ESPN perspective of it, yes, they can criticize Dana White. And to your point, yes, I think, like, there is a world where if Dana White was not involved with the UFC, the train would keep rolling. But they don't want to bring unwanted attention to their partner, to the property that they are producing and showing on the air, because then it raises those questions. Like, should we be having Gastelum and Imavov? Like, is that even an event that should be like? There are questions that become much larger when you shine the spotlight on it. They all just want to wash their hands of it.
But if this was an NFL owner, or if even
it would be the first story.
Or if it was Roger, but they're partners with the NFL, so why does he get treated differently?
Yeah, my personal opinion on that is I think it's a little bit closer to, and this is not new, everybody said this is closer to WWE and Vince McMahon than it is to other leagues. I also think there's a sentiment where, UFC produces the shows. It's not the same. They don't have the same relationship with that partner as they have with other organizations like the NBA and the NFL. UFC produces the content. They just take it and air it. There's not involvement in that capacity. And I think there's a potential sentiment where it's like the UFC ship kind of is over here. They're running their things. They give it to us and we produce it and we can be hands off and hopefully this goes away. But it will not.
Also, to your point, with the NFL, if it was Roger Goodell or someone, there's nowhere that they could hide from this. Like, you can't brush this under the rug. Like, you would have to address that. I feel like with this UFC, like, because of kind of what you just said, like, it's close to the WWE, the Vince McMahon, it's not really in the forefront, especially with all the other sports going on right now, like, that they sort of can hide from it. They don't have to address it.
Does anything happen, or is this done?
I still think no.
I think no. I think it depends on what the next domino is, what the next step is. As we said, if something happens where this becomes a story again, it will raise questions that I think will start to cool now, but they can't keep going up and down and up and down and up and down and continuing to have this be a recurring story and having to keep talking about it. And I think that is where it will get interesting. The pressure that they're feeling now isn't enough. They're not commenting and they haven't been forced to. But I think if something else happens where this becomes a story again, it's gonna be a problem.
An incident with a fighter, like a fighter, something similar to this happening with a fighter. Like with how many videos that were released of Dana White, condemning these actions in the past. If a fighter does something similar, it'll be very interesting to see how they respond.
A lot of fans, a lot of fighters exposed themselves this past week. And, correct me if I'm wrong, I only saw one UFC fighter condemn this, and that was Dustin Poirier. And if you read the transcript of the interview that was on Bloody Elbow, you could tell he didn't really want to talk about it. And I don't blame him. Like,
yeah,
I'm not going to ask Marlon Vera about this. I'm not going to ask Terrence McKinney about this because I don't want to put them in an uncomfortable situation. It's not fair for them to condemn their boss. It's not fair. It's just not. I can say it. They don't have to say it. I don't need them to say it. But it was crazy how many people were there to defend him, tripping over themselves to defend this type of activity. Very, very disheartening. You would love to see more people come out and be like, yo, this isn't really cool, but it's a tough spot. And, the commentators, the analysts that they have on payroll, I don't envy them as well, but none of them are able to talk about it. In fact, I don't even think anyone wants to even text me about it because I think they're all afraid to say it. And I don't blame them. Let me just be very clear about that. I don't blame them. I don't envy them. They're in a tough spot. I hope in the back of their mind, I hope at home they're all saying this is pretty fucked up. But I don't think that he can walk around with the same gusto and the same smugness and defiance that he did in the past. Sitting there in the middle of the cage with the what's that Fox News dude, Tucker Carlson and all that. This is forever going to be a stain on who he is. To the people who have a moral compass, to the people who actually have a soul, you cannot look at him the same.
Think about what you said earlier, though. Endeavor, their message was, we essentially don't care, right? They haven't made a statement. And they're saying they don't care. If you're a fighter, you have to be thinking, well, if the owner of the company, the promotion that I work for, is saying we don't care, it's dicey for me to potentially comment on it. They are in a very tough spot, as you've laid out. If Endeavor was to come out right away, or the UFC even, that one I wouldn't hold my breath, and said, we don't we condemn these actions, or whatever that statement would say. As a fighter, you might be more emboldened, you might be more empowered to voice your opinion, right? You might be able to say, okay, I agree with the statement that Endeavor said, you can't do that, blah, blah, blah. With them saying nothing, it puts the fighters in a precarious position. It puts the other employees in precarious positions. It is very difficult to kind of parse those two things out and ask them to have an opinion when they're not be able to take guidance from those above.
It's a tremendous point. And honestly, I have never said once in this past week, I want him out. I want him fired.
Yeah.
I have not said that once. I have not even hinted at that. I just want to know that everyone has a pulse over there. I just want to know that people
care. A little bit of accountability.
Yes. And I even said in his interview with TMZ, whatever you want to call it, I actually thought that his words and his demeanor and even not taking the excuses, it was on point.
Yeah.
But if you're asking me, by the way, the actions throughout the week completely erased that interview.
To me, that's the craziest part is that he didn't even really defend himself. But like you said, people were tripping over themselves to defend him. It's like he wasn't even.
But later in the week, gambling with the Nelk Boy guy, the F it Friday. To me, it's like, oh, you said you were embarrassed, really? Because if I'm embarrassed, I'm going away for a little bit. If I want to send a message to my roster, if I want to tell my fighters that this isn't gonna fly, I'm maybe sitting out for a few months from the public eye, right? I'm doing something substantial to say, oh, when this happened to the president of the organization, this was the response. Guess what the answer to that question is now? When this happened, the president of the organization, nothing happened. The response was nothing. The response wasn't even a comment. The response wasn't even a one line. We don't condone this and we're talking to him and we're dealing with it internally. Something. Just give us something. And I know you said last week, you said you don't even need that. Right? Didn't you say that in NYRic? You don't even need that. It's bullshit.
It's empty.
I need it. Just tell me you care. Right now you're telling the public and you're telling us, the media, that you don't even think highly enough to the point where you even would put out a 2-line sentence like that. You think you think we are so weak that this is going to just fly off and be forgotten about in 7 days.
No, you're absolutely right. And to clarify, when I say we don't need it, what I mean is I don't look to Endeavor. I don't look to ESPN. I don't look to the UFC for my morality. I don't care what that statement says because, to be honest, it's going to be crafted by 10 PR people run by XYZ person. But to your point, it sets a tone. It tells what the company feels. It tells what the company, what the direction of the company is. And as I said, just a little bit ago, it could give a clue to the fighters as to how they feel about it and what guardrails there are for them to kind of comment on this without feeling like they're putting themselves and their livelihood in jeopardy. So, yeah, it'd be nice to see, but to your point, this strategy has been effective in the past and will continue to be effective until their hand is forced.
And by the way, before you write, move on, before you write, you're still talking about this, before you write, get over it, do me a favor. Unfollow, stop watching, go somewhere else for your content because that's first of all, such fucking bullshit. We talk about this sport ad nauseum. We're giving you 12, 13, 14 hours of content a week. I'm not moving on. I'm not moving on to talk about UFC Apex just yet. I'm not doing that. All right. There'll be enough time to talk about the fights. There'll be enough time to talk about this. By the way, on an off week, right? There was nothing that happened this weekend in the world of MMA. There was Gervonta Davis who fought. Great. Nothing was going on. So there's no other news that you want us to talk about? No, there isn't. It doesn't exist. There's small things here or there, fine. But there's nothing bigger than this, in my opinion. And everyone's willingness to just kind of brush this under the rug. You know what happens when you brush something under the rug, guys? You just get a lumpy rug. That's it. It doesn't go away. Shout out to Emma Lovewell. She said that at Peloton earlier this morning. It doesn't go away. Your problems don't go away.
Said this morning on your Peloton?
Peloton this morning. Yes. The best. The GOAT.
That's great.
And it's true. It ain't going to go away. It'll be a lumpy rug from now until the end of time.
But if that lump doesn't get bigger, they might just live with a lumpy rug. We have to.
Seems like a lot of people are cool with just living with it, which is.
You think people are cool with living with a lumpy rug?
I think a lot of people, if you get on social media, I wonder if that's why Dana White starts going to the casinos and the F it Fridays, because he gets on Twitter and he sees 90% of the people defending him.
Right. What a bizarre freaking sport. By the way, what a stress for this sport, right?
Yeah.
What a start to the year. I mean, really, it started at the end of last year. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, but we went through it and just like depressing stuff. I can't even, it's not fair to put all this stuff in one pot, so to speak, but the passing of Stephan Bonner, now the passing of Victoria Lee, the Phil Baroni situation, which getting worse. Jose Aldo, is he a part of this crazy story in Brazil? Who the hell knows? Just every day, depressing shit. I think Terrence McKinney said it best. What did he say on Twitter? Something like, this has been a bad start to the year. Yeah. Way to put it mildly. Now, there has been something that was interesting that popped up last week, which I guess might be depressing or not, depending on how you look at it. Jake Paul signing with the PFL.
This is great. How could this be depressing?
I was like, who's seeing this as depressing?
Well, I mean, first of all, there were a lot of people who don't like that we talk about Jake Paul. Second of all, there's a lot of people who think that, he's the worst thing to happen to him. I don't know. There's just, you don't see the comment, Jake Paul. I guess now we can officially be okay with talking about Jake Paul on the show since he's an MMA fighter who has equity in an MMA organization. So we don't have to be apologists for this anymore. Here's my question. True or false? Jake Paul will compete in an MMA fight in 2023. NYRic?
False.
False. GC?
False.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't think he fights in 2023.
Okay, Jake Paul will compete in an MMA fight, period. NYRic?
True.
GC?
I'm also with Rick. True.
Wow. Jake Paul will compete in an MMA fight under the PFL banner.
Oh, man. I'm going to say true. I'll say
Really?
True,
I'll say
I
true.
guess. Yeah.
Why
He's
don't
gonna
you
get
guys-
in the smart cage? He hyped up the smart cage too much to not get in the smart cage.
Why? Wow. Why don't you guys think it happens this year? Didn't the press release imply this year?
Yeah, I mean, sure, maybe, but
Multi-year contract.
to me,
Sure.
the MMA portion of what he was talking about, the actual fight portion, not the ownership portion, kind of hinged a little bit on Nate Diaz, in my opinion, almost too much. And I don't think Nate Diaz would ever do something like that. I don't think Nate Diaz would sign on for somebody else's thing. I think Nate Diaz would either say, you come do my thing or we'll do something else. But I don't think he's just going to be like, great, now I'm fighting under the PFL banner against Jake Paul and Jake Paul's super fight thing. Not going to happen.
My understanding, by the way, is that Nate didn't know about all of that. And I don't know if that was the best play.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
That's not Nate. That doesn't feel like a Nate Diaz thing. And I'm not surprised that he tweeted out a picture of Ryzen. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, what a random comeback.
By the way, what a freaking scene that would be, right? Kind of freaking awesome. And honestly,
Sick.
if Ryzen has enough money to pay for Floyd and Manny,
Yeah.
they could afford him,
Oh, for sure.
right?
I think
For
think
sure.
he's somebody who would appreciate the history and the martial arts in that capacity.
Oh my
That he would do it. So
How's that prime treating you?
Yeah, all good. All good.
just to close the loop on that, I think it hinged a little bit too much on Nate. I don't think Jake Paul wants to just fight anybody, and I don't see a ton of potential options for him out there that he would get into an MMA fight this year. So yeah, I don't think it happens this year.
Can I tell you guys something? Okay, so I heard about this on Wednesday, and it came out on Thursday. I might have heard about it on Tuesday. Anyway, I let the New York Times have it. That's just the kind of guy that I am.
Wow.
But the thing is, initially I was like, okay, this is cool. We've seen some celebrities get involved with PFL, Wiz Khalifa, Ray Lewis, right? There's like some celebrities that have invested.
Yep.
Who was it? I believe
Kevin Hart was initial.
Yes.
His group was an
CC
initial
Sabathia
investor.
or something.
There's lots of names. Yeah.
Anyway, I was like, all right, that's cool. Get some equity, tweet some stuff, blah, blah, blah. Oh, there's actually a part where, he could fight for them. Great. Oh, he's going to head up this new super fight division that's going to be on pay-per-view, which maybe could entice, I don't know, a Francis Ngannou, if you will, even though I think Francis ultimately. But okay, now there's a reason. You don't have to be a part of the tournament. This is good. This gives them an out. But then I saw the video that he posted, the 6-minute video, and my thinking was, wow, this guy should actually be the face of the PFL.
100%.
This guy should be the promoter. Like this, no more Peter Murray, no more Ray Sefo. He should be the Dana White, the Eddie Hearn, the Bob Arum, the Vince McMahon, the Don King. He should be the guy because the way he sat there, first of all, it was very well produced, but also it actually explained the PFL better than I've ever seen anyone explain the PFL in a little, short format where we're showing B-roll of the video right here. It's on the PFL page. It's on his YouTube page. I actually think Jake would bring in, he would bring in media attention. He would take some subtle shots at the UFC. I actually think they should make him the guy at the dais.
100%. Not even, there's no debate. Like, how much do the promoters even talk? They talk around specific events. It's the fight week for the fight. He just needs to show up and be there and talk. There's no alternative. If they don't, I would actually say this. If they don't do that, they're messing up.
It's a miss.
They've failed. Yeah.
It's a big miss. Also, he's sitting there and he's talking about it. The one, okay, so I'll say it was a home run. It was a grand slam. It was a great clip, and I thought it did what it had to do. There were a couple subtle shots. The one part that hurt me so bad, right in the heart, was this is a taped clip, right? It wasn't obviously live. He mispronounced Olivier Aubert-Mercier's name. He called him Oliver, and then he also mispronounced Brendan Loughnan's name. He called him Loughnane. How does no one? Come on. Come on, we're so close. We have Jake Paul talking about Sadabusi and Larissa Pacheco. That's a win. How do you not pronounce their names correctly? How did no one at PFL pick this up?
I mean, that's a great question. How did nobody at PFL pick it up? But you know what? Like, all that matters is that he's bringing the notoriety to them. Who cares if he's pronouncing the name
Oliver? Correctly? I mean, I love Oliver. It's my son's name. It's Olivier.
They should make fun of it and run with it.
Yeah, make fun of it.
He's bringing the attention to the league. It's not, and the fighters will benefit from
his reach compared to the PFL's current reach it's exponential how much bigger it is.
If I'm one of those fighters and Jake Paul's going to put some extra money in my pocket because the PFL is now more profitable and noticeable, you could call me whatever the hell you want. Call me somebody else's name. I don't care. Put the money in my pocket.
Tie your boat to Jake Paul's ship here.
Why didn't Bellator do this? He was fighting on Showtime. They needed the jolt, right? Could you imagine if the CBS show's the first show under the Jake Paul regime?
Well, for one, to the point, I actually think he's going to have a lot more value as a promoter than a fighter.
Right.
Again, I don't think he's going to fight this year
100%.
In MMA. So then that puts Scott Coker in a position, right? Are you recruiting your own demise, right? Are you knocking yourself out of a spot?
Coker never likes doing that stuff anyway.
Yeah, well, he's not great at it. But
I know, but I feel like he would actually welcome the idea of someone else doing it on his behalf or instead of him.
No, I mean,
no.
I just feel like this fits more than with Bellator. Like it feels like PFL is trying to get in within like the celebrity sphere, the influencer sphere, like they do
the relationship with Showtime. They could use the jolt. I don't know.
I see what you're saying, the path to it, but it feels to me like PFL, it fits much more for Jake Paul to be a part of PFL as it does to with Bellator.
I agree with Connor. They're also just more innovative. Let's call it what it is. Bellator
100%.
hasn't done anything that interesting in a decade. Like,
wow,
they're just
a
not
decade?
When's the last time Bellator did something that you're like, wow?
Grand Prix?
They've done that. How many times have they done that? That's the old Strikeforce playbook.
Right.
Is that new?
No.
No.
They also have to
PFL is constantly trying to do new stuff. This makes a lot more sense to Connor's point. The PFL and Jake Paul is a better fit.
PFL, Jake Paul, just his presence is huge. I agree. I think 2023 might be tough. Like we talked about last year, it's going to be one of the stories to watch. PFL becoming number 2, if not already. A lot of people at Bellator are very upset with my my take on that. Called me afterwards, very upset.
I got to be honest. I don't get the
take of them being number 2 or potentially being for sale.
No, that part. No,
okay.
no,
the number 2 thing.
The number 2 thing. Yeah,
I honestly don't get the promotions fighting over the number 2 thing. I really don't get it. Who cares?
Well, I'll tell you what it is. There's a bit of a smugness and a defiance on the Bellator part because it's like we've had this spot for so long. And now it's like, who are these guys? Who's this guy? Like, what?
Yeah, but every
and they don't want
does this.
Yeah, but you know what?
Literally,
one is number 2. Bellator is number 2. PFL is number 2. It has no meaning anymore. It has an absence of
Combate came on and claimed it.
Yeah,
like everyone is trying to get.
Who cares? Who cares? You shouldn't care.
Yes, there's a clear number 1, and that's all that matters.
By the way, they care.
Stephen A. Smith, we don't care.
By the way, they do care.
But why?
Yeah, they care
I'm talking
a
about
lot.
we, the fans, the media. We don't care. I don't care.
I kind of care.
Why?
I want to know.
What does it tell you?
I want to know who the first option is for a fighter if they're a free agent. Where's?
But that's not what quote unquote. Is that how they measure it? Number 2 is that how they're measuring it?
Well, what's the biggest story in pro wrestling? It's AEW becoming a viable number 2.
Yeah, well, that's a 2-horse race, right?
No, but I'm saying, wouldn't it be great if there was a number 2 in MMA?
Okay, but that's not what this debate is about.
Kind of is.
None of these guys are actually a number 2. If you're making the analogy to
I think
WWE
PFL could be a number 2 with their willingness to spend.
None of them are number 2
at this moment.
They're number Z. They're not.
I couldn't agree.
The gap is giant.
I couldn't agree more right now. But there is. I mean, there.
So let's have that conversation when they get there. Who cares about this number?
Well, here's the crazy thing: Bellator thinks they're number 2.
Yeah.
Great.
Everyone thinks they're number 2.
Everyone thinks they're number 2.
Number 2.
It
One
means
championship
0.
thinks they're number 2. PFL thinks they're number 2.
No fan is sitting there like, man, number 1's not on. What am I doing?
Yeah.
Oh, number 2. Let me go find number 2.
To
Nobody
me,
cares.
all that
about
matters
this
is you either
designation.
watch the UFC and then you also watch everything else, or you just watch the UFC.
Yep. Nobody cares.
That seems like you're either a hardcore and you just want to watch MMA, or you just watch the UFC.
Focus on improving your product and less on who's number 2. Nobody cares about number 2.
Everyone that I know that watches PFL also watches Bellator, also watches One Championship. It's not where I know a ton of people that just watch the UFC.
But is there a chance Jake Paul more money, more invest, whatever, ESPN platform, blah, 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 blah.
Great graphics package, like innovative things going on within the league, trying to get in with celebrities, with influencers. Yeah, like I feel like they are on the up and up.
There is, but let's get there first.
I will just say that within those walls, those companies, it matters to them, and Bellator thinks it's not even a question. Bellator thinks it's like they're like offended by me even having this conversation.
If it matters to them, they should be doing more to solidify that, because they ain't. All of them.
Yeah, they have really good fighters on their roster. It's just sometimes the production around the promotion is just incredibly lacking.
I do think they sell more tickets. Like they'll go to Inglewood, and I think they'll sell more than PFL will.
I mean, they have really good fighters on their roster.
Again, though, what are we measuring for number 2? This is the thing. They all think they're number 2 because Campbell McLaren wants to point to the TV ratings. Chatri wants to point to the invisible, not existent audience. Bellator wants to point to the legacy and the history. PFL wants to point to the innovation. Like, they're all choosing their own.
All this when in reality, KSW
destiny.
is the real number 2.
Wow. I was going to say, Combate just had the biggest fight in female MMA history.
I know. So, again,
it was huge.
This whole conversation supports the idea of how irrelevant this conversation is.
KSW,
Number 2 is
most fun promotion.
not a thing.
By the way, do you know who won that fight, like right now?
I don't even know who fought in it.
Remember, we had the interview.
I remember it, yeah.
I think the Queen won
It's been too far.
Oh, my God. I want to ask you guys about Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia, because yesterday I put out a tweet. Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia is the biggest fight in America for boxing. Got a lot of people who are upset saying that it was Usyk versus Fury. Got a lot of people who are upset that it was Jake Paul versus Nathan Diaz.